Morning light drifted across the wide Kansas plains as Ethan Ward, a quiet but respected third-generation farmer, checked the weather report on his porch. Harvest was just days away. His wheat field, nearly 70 acres of golden, rippling grain, looked like a sea of sunlight, humming gently under the soft breeze. For Ethan, this wasn't just a crop. It was a year's hope, months of work, and the last thing connecting him to his late father. Beyond the open field stood the new housing development, Willow Ridge Estates, governed by a strict, notoriously petty HOA. Ever since the estates were built, Ethan's life had become a tug-of-war with the HOA president, Karen Holbrook, a sharp-tongued woman whose smile like her face was carved from porcelain. She believed the farmland ruined the aesthetics of the community. Ethan believed she had too much time and too little sense. But today felt peaceful. Too peaceful. Ethan walked the southern fence line, checking perimeter gates when he stopped. A figure in a crisp lilac blazer and sunglasses strode along the property edge, holding a clipboard. Lydia Grant, the HOA compliance officer, Karen's loyal shadow. Lydia scanned Ethan's field as if the wheat was committing crime. She nodded politely. "Morning, Mr. Ward. HOA inspection. New guidelines. New guidelines for farmland." Ethan answered, raising an eyebrow. "We're expanding safety requirements." She pointed her pen toward his field. "Dry crops next to residential homes create elevated fire risk. We're obligated to note it." Ethan stared at her. "It's a wheat field. It's supposed to be dry." Lydia scribbled something, expression unreadable. "Karen will discuss it with you." And that was a moment Ethan knew. The HOA was planning something. But what came next was far beyond any petty violation notice. 2 days later, the sun hung heavy, heat shimmering off the fields. Harvest was set to begin in less than 48 hours. Ethan spent the morning tuning combine, tightening belts, checking fuel lines, humming along to the radio. Everything felt ready. At 2:17 p.m., his phone buzzed, a text from his neighbor, old Mr. Franklin. "Smoke rising near your west fence." Ethan dropped the wrench. He sprinted outside. A thin column of smoke coiled upward like a dark finger pointing to the sky. His heart lurched. The wheat was burning. As he tore toward the field, the crackle and roar of flames swallowed the silence. Fire spread in sheets, racing across the dry crop. A gust of wind fed it faster than Ethan could reach it. And then he saw her, Karen Holbrook, standing at the edge of the field, watering her roses. Her garden hose trickled lazily over her prized Bloomstar roses, while behind her, Ethan's livelihood went up in a wall of orange fire. Her sunglasses glinted as she looked over her shoulder, as if mildly annoyed by the noise. Ethan skidded to a stop. "Call 911, he shouted. Karen raised an eyebrow. "It's just a little crop problem. Don't overreact." He stared at her. "My field is burning." Karen shrugged. "Well, maybe you should have followed the HOA fire mitigation guidelines. Lydia filed a report about it this morning." Ethan felt cold even with the fire blasting heat at his face. "Are you implying I caused this?" "I'm simply saying," Karen replied, voice honey-sweet, "that homeowners must take responsibility." A burst of flame erupted behind her, black smoke twisting up like a storm. Ethan grabbed his radio, shouting for county fire services. Engines were already approaching, sirens wailing across the fields. But Ethan's eyes stayed locked on Karen. Her garden hose still ran. She hadn't even turned to look at the fire. An hour later, the flames were out. But 70 acres of wheat? Gone. Ash coated the ground like gray snow, the stalks reduced to curling black skeletons. Fire trucks idled. Neighbors stood with hands on their mouths. Ethan stood silently, staring at what had been his entire year. The fire chief approached, adjusting his helmet. "We'll run a full investigation, Ethan. But right now, this wasn't lightning, wasn't machinery, and didn't start naturally." Ethan's jaw tightened. Someone started it. The chief nodded gravely. "Yeah. And based on burn patterns, it started close to the fence, near the HOA boundary." Ethan's eyes drifted again toward Karen's house, where she now stood on the porch sipping lemonade. Lydia stood behind her, arms crossed, expression firm, eyes darting away when Ethan looked at her. Something wasn't right. Karen whispered something to Lydia, and Lydia immediately pulled out her phone, typing fast. The way she moved, rigid, nervy, told Ethan everything. She was hiding something. 2 days after the fire, Ethan sat before the county board, reporting the incident. Karen arrived late, swishing in, wearing a bright floral blazer, carrying color-coded HOA files. Lydia followed with 2 binders. Karen smiled sweetly. "Before Mr. Ward presents his narrative, I'd like to state the HOA's position. The room tensed. She stepped forward. Mr. Ward ignored repeated fire safety warnings. The HOA urged him to clear brush and reduce fuel load. He refused. The fire, though unfortunate, was predictable. Ethan slammed his palms on the table. You told me a wheat field was foo asterisk ugly, not a fire hazard. Karen sniffed dramatically. Language, Mr. Ward. This is a public forum. Lydia looked down, chewing her lip. The county chair turned to Ethan. Do you have evidence tying the HOA to the fire? Not yet. Not then. But he felt the truth sitting like a stone in his chest. No, Ethan admitted. Not yet. Karen leaned back, victorious. But the chair continued. However, we will investigate your claims. And if the HOA obstructs us, there will be consequences. Karen's smile froze. The next morning, Ethan received a call from a local teen, Tyler Jennings, who lived in Willow Ridge. Nervous voice, shaky breathing. And Mr. Ward, I need to tell you something. About the fire. Ethan's pulse hammered. Go ahead. I saw something. Karen and Lydia. They were at the fence before the fire started. Lydia had something in her hand, like a flare or something metal. Then Karen told her to hurry. Ethan stood there, stunned. You're willing to testify. Silence. Then a quiet, yes. Before Ethan could thank him, he heard a door slam on Tyler's side, followed by Karen's unmistakable voice yelling, Tyler, what did I say about phone calls during HOA quiet hours? The line went dead. Tyler was scared, maybe in danger. Ethan clenched his fists. This wasn't just an accident. It was a setup, a crime. 1 week after the fire, Ethan stepped into the county courthouse, exhausted, angry, and ready to fight. He expected to see lawyers, board members, investigators. He did not expect what happened next. As the clerk called a case number, the courtroom door opened. Karen Holbrook marched in. As a defendant, she froze when she saw Ethan sitting at the plaintiff's table. Her eyes widened, a perfect flicker of shock before she covered it with a brittle smile. Lydia followed behind her, clutching documents with shaking hands. Ethan felt the ground steady beneath him for the first time in a week. This was it. The truth was about to start unraveling. The fluorescent lights of the county courthouse hummed quietly as Karen Holbrook took her seat at the defendant's table. She smoothed the lapels of a rose-patterned blazer, trying to hide the faint tremor in her fingers. Her lawyer whispered urgently in her ear, but Karen wasn't listening. Her eyes stayed fixed on Ethan Ward, who sat with a calm, steady expression of a man carrying both grief and purpose. Ethan didn't stare back. He didn't need to. Karen already looked shaken. The judge, a stern woman named Judge Monroe, entered with the authority of someone who had seen decades of lies unravel in her courtroom. Everyone rose. When they sat again, tension stretched across the room like piano wire. Case 2428. The clerk announced, State of Kansas versus Karen Holbrook. Charges, willful destruction of agricultural property, reckless endangerment, and obstruction of investigation. Gasps rippled through the spectators. But Karen didn't gasp. She smirked. Your Honor, she said sweetly, this is a misunderstanding blown wildly out of proportion. I am the HOA president, not a criminal. Judge Monroe didn't blink. That remains to be determined. Lydia Grant, the HOA compliance officer, sat behind Karen, her posture painfully rigid. Shadows under her eyes revealed sleepless nights. And then the prosecutor rose. Your Honor, the state calls its first witness, Mr. Ethan Ward. Ethan stood, his boots echoing on the polished floor as he walked to the stand. He wasn't a man used to courtrooms. He was a man used to land, weather, and long days. But today, he stood like someone who'd been forged in wildfire. After the oath, the prosecutor began. Mr. Ward, describe the events of June 14th. Ethan took a breath. 2 days before harvest, my wheat field caught fire. Spread fast. Within an hour, 70 acres were gone. And where was Miss Holbrook? Ethan's jaw tightened, standing by the roses in her yard, watering them, watching the fire. Whispers stirred across the benches. And what did she say when you asked her to call 911? Ethan looked directly at Karen. She called it a little crop problem. Karen sat motionless, but fury twitched at the corner of her mouth. When Ethan stepped down, the prosecutor called the next witness, Lydia Grant. Lydia swallowed hard as she walked to the stand. She glanced at Karen, seeking reassurance. Karen offered none. She simply turned her head slightly, a silent warning. The prosecutor circled. Ms. Grant, you filed a report the morning of the fire claiming Mr. Ward's field was a fire risk. Tell the court how you determined that. Lydia stiffened. New HOA guidelines. Guidelines implemented the day before the fire. A pregnant pause. Yes, Lydia whispered. And did Ms. Holbrook instruct you to file that report? Karen's eyes shot up. Lydia's face drained of color. I don't recall. The prosecutor leaned in. You don't recall, or you won't say. Karen's hand gripped the edge of the table. Lydia stared at her, fear flickering like a trapped spark. Judge Monroe intervened. Ms. Grant, you are required to answer. Lydia's voice cracked. Yes, she told me to. Karen slammed her palm against the desk. Lydia! But the judge silenced her with one cutting glare. What else did she tell you? The prosecutor pressed. Lydia's breath heaved. The courtroom waited. She told me to go to the fence line and check the property. She said she needed to document a violation before the county board meeting. And did you? Yes. What time? 1:30 p.m. And what time did the fire start? 2:17. A murmur swelled behind the benches. The prosecutor slowly paced. Ms. Grant, did you see anything unusual at the fence line? Lydia hesitated, then shook her head. No, nothing. But Ethan watched her eyes and saw a lie buried deep inside. After Lydia stepped down, the courtroom buzzed with quiet speculation. The prosecutor shuffled papers, then announced, the state introduces Exhibit 12. Karen's lawyer shot up. We haven't been shown this. It was submitted this morning after a community member brought it forward. Karen stiffened. A monitor was rolled to the center of the courtroom. The lights dimmed, and the screen turned on. Grainy footage appeared. A ring camera from one of the homes. The timestamp, June 14 to 1:47 p.m. The camera pointed toward the HOA path that bordered Ethan's fence. Two figures walked into view. Karen and Lydia. The courtroom froze. Karen, unaware she was being filmed, marched with purpose, pointing at Ethan's field and talking fast. Lydia followed nervously, holding something metallic in her hand. The footage was too distant to show every detail, but the shape was unmistakable. A road flare. Karen gestured angrily toward the field, then toward the flare. Lydia shook her head repeatedly, hesitant. Karen leaned in close, her face hard, eyes cold. Lydia flinched. Then the video ended. Silence blanketed the room. Karen shot to her feet. That is taken out of context. I was instructing her on safety. Judge Monroe slammed her gavel. Sit down, Ms. Holbrook. Karen Saturday. Her lawyer looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. After a 10-minute recess, Lydia asked to speak privately with the prosecutor. When court reconvened, her expression was different, lighter, like the weight of months had lifted. She returned to the stand. Ms. Grant, the prosecutor said gently, is there something you wish to add? Lydia nodded, hands trembling. Yes, I need to tell the truth. Karen leaned forward, eyes murderous. Lydia, don't you dare. But Lydia kept going. Karen told me the wheat field made the HOA look cheap. She said she wanted it gone before the open house event for new buyers. Shock swept the courtroom. So she ordered me to document violations. When it didn't work, she told me we needed to create urgency. Urgency, the prosecutor echoed. She said a small fire near the fence line would force Ethan to cut down the crop. Karen shot up. This is slander. She's lying. The state coerced. Enough. Judge Monroe's voice cracked like a whip. Lydia's eyes filled with tears. I didn't want to do it. I swear I didn't want to. I only held the flare to scare him. But then Karen grabbed it. She said she'd do it herself. Karen's face drained white. And did she? Lydia nodded slowly. Yes. Karen lit the flare. She tossed it over the fence. The room erupted. People stood. Reporters scribbled. The bailiff shouted for order. Karen buried her head in her hands. Ethan exhaled, a breath he'd been holding for a week. Karen was taken into custody before she could leave the building. As she was handcuffed, she screamed at Lydia, at Ethan, at the judge, at anyone who would listen. You don't understand. The farmland brings down property values. I was trying to help the community. Her voice echoed through the hallway before the doors slammed shut. Lydia sat on the courthouse steps afterward, shaking violently as she pulled her knees to her chest. Ethan approached slowly and offered a bottle of water. She looked up with swollen eyes. I'm sorry. I never meant for it to happen. I was scared of her. Ethan nodded softly. I know. It got out of control, she choked. So fast. Fire always does. The wind rustled the courthouse flags overhead. People passed, whispering. Reporters hovered. But Ethan didn't care about the noise around them. For the first time since the fire, he felt clarity. The truth was finally out. But as he walked toward his truck, he sensed something deeper simmering. Karen might have been arrested, but HOAs didn't operate alone. Someone else had to sign off on the emergency guidelines. Someone approved Lydia's violation forms. Someone had been helping Karen behind the scenes. This wasn't over. Not even close. The county courthouse parking lot buzzed with reporters, HOA residents, and curious townsfolk. But Ethan Ward barely noticed any of them as he stepped out into the fading afternoon light. He'd won a battle. The truth about the fire was out, yet an annoying sense of unease followed him to the truck like a shadow chained to his boots. Karen Holbrook might have lit the flare, but she hadn't acted alone, not with the confidence she carried, not with the paperwork Lydia didn't understand but signed anyway, not with the guidelines approved overnight by the HOA board. Someone higher up had helped her, someone with more to lose. Ethan drove home on the long road cutting through his darkened wheat fields. Ash clouded the edges of the horizon like bruises across the earth. He rolled down his window. The air still smelled faintly of smoke. He parked by the barn and stepped into the heat-thick evening. The sky glowed red from the sunset, eerie and mirrored in the blackened fields. A hard wind blew through the charred stalks, whispering like they were telling secrets. He stood for a long time, listening. Then, headlights appeared behind him. A silver SUV pulled onto his gravel drive, tires crunching softly. The door opened, and Sheriff Lena Becker stepped out, tall, sharp-eyed, and respected in the county for her blunt honesty. Evening, Ward, she said, walking up. What's going on, Sheriff? She exhaled and crossed her arms. We pulled phone records, HOA communications, emails, texts, meeting minutes. Her expression tightened. This goes way deeper than Karen. Ethan's jaw set. I knew it. Sheriff Becker looked over the damaged field. I need to show you something. Inside the sheriff's office conference room, papers lay scattered across the table, some printed, some handwritten, some with signatures Ethan recognized. Beckett tapped a stack of documents with her pen. These are the emergency HOA amendments Karen pushed through. They required approval from at least 2 board members. And she pointed. The signatures read, Karen Holbrook, President, Gregory Ellis, Treasurer, Monica Hale, Vice Chair. Ethan frowned. I know Greg Ellis. He's harmless. Runs a bakery. Becca shook her head. Maybe harmless in front of customers, but financial records show he authorized $4,800 of HOA funds under a label called Property Safety Initiative. No invoices, no tracking, no explanation. And Monica, different story. Becca clicked her tongue. Monica handled new development proposals. She approved 3 plans in the past year but blocked one, and guess whose land was in that proposal? Ethan's stomach tightened. Mine. Becca nodded. The developer wants to expand Willow Ridge East, but they needed your land. You refused to sell. And burning the field would, what? Ethan muttered. Make me desperate? Ruin my harvest? Force me into selling? Becca didn't answer. She didn't have to. The motive lay in Ash. Sheriff Becker insisted on taking Ethan along. If you want to understand what's really going on, you'll want to hear this yourself. They drove into town and parked outside a sleek glass office building, far too modern for rural Kansas. Inside, a receptionist led them to the 2nd floor. A polished office door read, Richard Mallory, Regional Development Director, Willow Ridge Expansion. Sheriff Becker knocked. Mallory, we need to talk. The man inside, silver hair, immaculate suit, rose with polished charm. Sheriff Becker. And Mr. Ward, yes? I heard about the unfortunate fire. Ethan glared. Unfortunate? My entire year burned. Mallory clasped his hands behind his back. Yes, a tragedy. A shame. But sometimes change comes in ways we don't expect. Becca stepped forward. Did you have prior communication with the HOA regarding Mr. Ward's land? Mallory smiled faintly, too faintly. We discussed possibilities. That's what developers do. Did Karen Holbrook contact you before the fire? Mallory adjusted a cufflink. We exchanged emails. Routine correspondence. And did she mention her issues with Mr. Ward's wheat field? Mallory's smile thinned. She had aesthetic concerns. Standard HOA frustrations. Becca's eyes narrowed. Oh, I don't think that's all she expressed. Mallory tilted his head. I have nothing else to say. Becca leaned forward. Then I'll rephrase. We subpoenaed your email records. For the first time, Mallory's smile cracked. Ethan watched the man's rigid posture, the way his fingers twitched, not nervous, but calculating. Mallory wasn't stupid. He understood what this meant. Becca slid a printed email onto his desk. Karen's name was bold at the top. Mallory scanned it, and his face went stone cold. The message read, Greg and Monica are on board. We'll create urgency. Once the field is cleared, Ward will sell. He'll have no choice. Karen, Mallory swallowed. Let me explain. No need, Becca said. The jury will figure it out. Ethan stayed silent. He didn't trust himself to speak. Late that night, Ethan walked through the burnt field with a flashlight. We're inside across the scorched earth, kicking little swirls of ash into the beam. He knelt, running soil through his fingers. It crumbled like charcoal. He whispered to the darkness, I'm not selling. A soft rustle came from behind him. Ethan turned sharply. A figure stood at the fence line. Tall, slim, female, holding a clipboard. The new HOA officer. Not Lydia. Someone else. Someone he'd never seen before. She stepped forward, her heels crunching on gravel. Mr. Ward, she said politely. Her tone carried no emotion at all. I didn't catch your name, Ethan replied cautiously. Mara Collings, she said with a faint smile. The HOA's interim compliance officer. Interim, meaning Lydia was gone, and someone new was already stepping in. Ethan narrowed his eyes. You're here late. HOA business doesn't sleep, she said evenly. I wanted to inspect the damage. Her eyes scanned the blackened field without flinching. I'm sure you've had a difficult week. Ethan studied her posture, too calm, too still. What do you want? He asked. She handed him an envelope. The HOA will be filing a counterclaim. Ethan froze. For what? Violation of community hazard ordinances, she said. Your fire damaged HOA shared landscaping. Ethan stared at her in disbelief. You're blaming me for the fire Karen started. Mara's smile sharpened, faint, but undeniably sharp. Mr. Ward, the HOA is a structured institution. One officer's actions do not represent the board. And yet they signed off on her plan, Ethan replied coldly. Mara tilted her head. So you believe the board is complicit? Ethan didn't answer. He didn't trust the silence around them. Mara stepped closer, her perfume faint but strangely sterile, like hospital antiseptic. I'd advise you to settle quickly, she said softly. It's better for everyone. Then she turned and walked away. Ethan's pulse pounded. The new officer wasn't here to clean up a mess. She was here to contain something, to protect someone, to keep the board intact. The HOA wasn't backing down. It was preparing for war. At dawn, Ethan received a call. Mr. Ward. A trembling voice. Lydia, I shouldn't be calling. They told me to stay quiet. But I found something you need to hear. Where are you? At my sister's house, she whispered. I'm scared, Ethan. Karen wasn't the real leader. She was just loud. Ethan's chest tightened. Then who was? Lydia sent a file. An audio clip. He pressed play. Static. Then voices. Karen's sharp tone. It'll work. Ward is stubborn, but after this, he'll fold. A male voice answered, calm and cold. He won't fold. Not unless you escalate. Do what you must. Don't worry, Karen said. I have Lydia. She'll follow orders. A pause. Then the voice again. Do it before the investors fly in. I need that land secured. Ethan's breath froze. He recognized the voice instantly. Mallory, the developer wasn't just helping. He was ordering it. And behind him, investors. There was a larger plan. A bigger force. A reason they needed Ethan's land now. The fire was only the first strike. That night, Ethan sat alone in the kitchen, replaying the recording over and over. Each word felt heavier. The scope of conspiracy spread wider and wider. HOA leadership, developer, approvals, hidden funds, and now investors hungry for expansion. A knock came at the door. Sheriff Becker again. She stepped inside quietly. Got your voicemail. You sounded shaken. What's wrong? Ethan handed her his phone. She listened to the recording once, twice, and slammed her fist on the table. Those bastards weren't sabotaging a field, she hissed. They were orchestrating a land grab. Ethan nodded. Karen was just a match. Mallory gave the orders. Becca's eyes burned. This isn't an HOA case anymore. This is criminal conspiracy and possibly racketeering. She pulled her coat tighter. We're taking this higher. Ethan stood. Higher than county. Much higher, Becca said. We're calling in the state attorney general. Ethan exhaled slowly. Finally, real muscle. Becca started for the door but turned back. One more thing. Don't go outside alone tonight. Ward. Mallory knows the walls are closing in. He's not going to sit quietly. The door closed behind her. Ethan looked out the window. Across the field, a car was parked at the edge of the darkened road. Engine off. Lights off. Watching. The war had already begun. The night settled over the village like a heavy cloak, dim lanterns flickering against the cold wind. Karen stood near the ruined boundary of her old land, staring at the ashes where her family's home once stood. She felt the weight of silence pressing in, too quiet, too still. Then she heard it, a soft crunch of gravel, slow footsteps approaching from the path behind her. Karen turned sharply. A figure emerged out of the shadows, a tall man wrapped in a weather-beaten coat, hood pulled low over his face. He walked with purpose, but not with the aggression of the men Karen had faced before. More like someone carrying a secret too heavy to bear. She stepped back cautiously. Who are you? Her voice steady, though her pulse raced. The man lifted his hood just enough for his eyes to catch the moonlight, tired, but sharp. I've been looking for you, he said quietly. Karen stiffened. Why? He didn't come closer. Instead, he dropped a small metal badge into the dirt between them. She recognized it instantly, her father's security insignia. Her chest tightened. Where did you get that? The man exhaled slowly. I was there, the night they took everything from your family. Karen's breath hitched. She stared at him, anger, shock, fear mixing into one stormy emotion. So you're one of them. No, his answer was immediate. I tried to stop what happened, but they outnumbered me, and your father, he trusted the wrong people. Karen clenched her fists. If you know what happened, tell me. Tell me everything. The man's voice dropped lower, almost a whisper. They weren't after land. They were after a document your father protected. Something that proves the original ownership of the entire valley. If it surfaces, their whole operation collapses. Karen felt her heartbeat thundering in her ears. The land wasn't the target. We were. Yes. And now, he continued, glancing around cautiously, they know you survived. They're looking for you. Karen's eyes narrowed, not with fear this time, but with rising fire. Let them come, she said. I'm not running anymore. The man finally stepped closer, slowly, like approaching a wounded lion. If you want answers, and if you want justice, I can help you. But first, he pulled a folded piece of map from his coat. You'll have to follow me. There's something your father hid, something they couldn't find. Karen stared at the map, her pulse surging with new purpose. For the first time since returning home, she felt a sliver of direction, an opening in the dark. She nodded once. Show me. The man turned toward the forest trail. Then stay quiet, he murmured. They are already closer than you think. Karen followed, vanishing into the shadows with him, unaware that two red laser dots flickered briefly on the stones where she had been standing moments before, then disappeared. The night after the fire reinvestigation, Karen sat alone in her dim living room, staring at the charred map Nathan's father had drawn. The lines were shaky, hand-drawn, incomplete, but something about them felt intentional, like a path. Nathan stood behind her. You think your father left this for you? He asked quietly. Karen didn't answer. She was staring at a single marking, a circle, deep inside a region of Forrester County had technically restricted decades ago. Her father had been there, and if he'd been there, someone else had followed him. The next morning, the two drove into the woods. The forest was calm, wet from last night's rain, sunlight dripping through branches. They walked for almost an hour, following the shaky pencil marks on the map. At times, Karen stopped to catch her breath, not because she was tired, but because she could feel something pulling her deeper, like a memory she didn't fully recognize. Eventually, the trees parted into a clearing. Nathan froze. Karen's breath hitched. There it was, hidden beneath overgrown vines, mud, and a collapsed metal door. A structure. Not a house. Not a shed. A bunker. Karen walked toward it slowly, the hairs on her arms rising. Her father was never a paranoid man, so why would he build or hide a bunker? Nathan crouched and pulled at the rusted handle. The metal groaned, resisted, then finally lifted, letting out a breath of stale air that smelled like old paper and dust. Inside, they found a desk, a metal cabinet, a broken monitor, and a stack of files, water damaged but still readable. Karen reached for one file labeled County Land Survey, 1997. Inside were photos, aerial shots of farmland, maps, signatures. One signature stopped her cold. HOA President Margaret Layton. Nathan's eyes narrowed. Karen, isn't she the same person your father warned you about? Karen nodded slowly, hands trembling as she lifted the next page. Her father had written, "If something happens to me, follow the land. Someone is buying the county from underneath us. Don't trust the HOA. Don't trust the agreements. And don't trust a woman who smiles when she lies." Karen sat down hard on the cold floor, chest tightening. My father knew. He knew they were doing something illegal. Nathan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We'll expose it, whatever it is." Before they could gather the rest of the files, a noise echoed above them, branches snapping. Footsteps. Heavy. Nathan's jaw clenched. Someone followed us. Karen stuffed the documents into a backpack and nodded toward the exit. They climbed out and froze. Standing among the trees was Margaret Layton, the HOA president who had burned Nathan's wheat field. Behind her were two men in black jackets. Margaret smiled her calm, poisonous smile. Looking for ghosts of the past. "Karen." Nathan stepped forward. "You torched my field to scare me off. Why? What are you hiding?" Margaret's smile didn't fade. "You're trespassing on restricted land. Turn over whatever you found, and I might forget you were here." Karen's hand tightened around the backpack strap. "Over my dead body." The smile vanished. Margaret nodded at her men. "Take it." Nathan grabbed Karen's hand and ran. Shots rang out. Birds scattered. Branches broke beneath their feet as they sprinted downhill through the forest. Karen stumbled, but Nathan caught her. "Don't stop," he yelled. They burst out of the woods, gasping, hearts pounding, just as Margaret's men reached the tree line. Nathan started the truck, gravel spraying behind them as they sped down the dirt path. Karen looked back one last time. Margaret stood in the center of the road, watching them disappear, her eyes cold with promise. This wasn't over. Not even close. The sun was sinking behind the line of wheat fields when Nathan and Karen finally made it back to his farmhouse. Dust coated the truck. Their shirts were torn from the sprint through the woods, and Karen's backpack, stuffed with her father's secret documents, sat between them like a detonator waiting to go off. Nathan killed the engine. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was heavy, the kind that comes after you've been hunted. Karen finally exhaled. They weren't just following us, they were waiting for us. Nathan looked at the tree line in the distance. Margaret wouldn't bring armed men unless this was bigger than HOA business. Karen unzipped the backpack slowly. Inside were her father's 1997 land survey files, a map showing county property lines, a list of landowners from 30 years ago, a document stamped confidential, county development item in one sealed envelope addressed to K. Hollis, for when you're ready. Her breath caught at that last one. Nathan leaned closer. "You sure you want to open it now?" Karen shook her head. "Not yet. If I open it, there's no going back." Nathan nodded. They decided to start with the county development file. Karen spread the pages across the kitchen table, while Nathan set a pot of coffee on the stove. The night outside was dark, quiet, too quiet. Even the crickets seemed to hesitate. As they flipped through documents, the full picture began to form. 27 years ago, the county board had quietly approved a land sweep. Large areas of farmland, including Nathan's, had been flagged for future industrial use. But here was a catch. The documents showed they were planning to seize the land through stage violations, HOA manipulation, and forced sales. Karen felt her stomach twist. My father didn't just oppose them. He found proof. That's why they targeted him. Nathan rubbed his temples. And now they're trying again, using Margaret as a front. Karen looked down at her father's scrawled handwriting on one sheet. "If you expose them, they'll come for you. But the truth won't die if you keep it moving." Just then, headlights swept across the farmhouse window. Nathan's head shot up. "You expecting anyone?" Karen's pulse spiked. "No." Nathan grabbed the small handgun he kept above the cabinet. An old one, legal, registered, mostly used to scare off coyotes. The car outside idled. A door slammed. Footsteps approached. Nathan silently motioned for Karen to stay back. He opened the front door slowly. A young woman stood on the porch, shivering, her face pale and terrified. She wasn't Margaret's age, more like late 20s, dressed in office attire, hair messy like she'd run through wind. "I need help," she gasped. "Please, they're following me." Nathan's grip loosened slightly. "Who are you?" She looked around in panic, as if expecting someone to lunge from the shadows. "My name is Deputy Emily Ward," she whispered. "I work at the county clerk's office." Karen stepped forward. "You're a county officer. What are you doing here?" Emily swallowed, visibly shaking. "I know who you are, both of you, and I know what you found in the woods." Her voice dropped to a desperate whisper. "They killed your father, Karen, and they are going to kill you too." Karen felt everything inside her go cold. "How do you know that?" Emily pulled a flash drive from her pocket. "Because I'm the one who found the video." Nathan took a step closer. "Video of what?" Emily hesitated, then said the words that cracked the room open. "Your father's final hours." Karen's legs buckled. Nathan caught her before she hit the floor. Emily continued, her voice trembling. "I shouldn't have seen it. I was digitizing old county evidence files. One was mislabeled. When I opened it, I saw him trapped in a room. He was trying to send a message. Someone cut the feed before he finished." Karen covered her mouth, tears filling her eyes. No, please." Emily nodded sadly. "I don't know who ordered it, but Margaret was there. I saw her. She's not just an HOA president. She's part of something much bigger." Nathan steadied himself. "Why come to us?" Emily blinked back tears. "Because once I took the flash drive, they noticed. They tried to grab me when I left the office. I drove straight here. You're the only people who can stop this." Before anyone could speak, 3 gunshots shattered the night. The farmhouse window exploded. A bullet ripped through the kitchen wall. Nathan shouted, "Down!" Karen dove to the floor. Emily screamed, clutching her arm, grazed but alive. Outside, headlights switched off. Silence. Then the crunch of boots on gravel. Karen looked up, eyes blazing through tears. "They found us again." Nathan loaded the gun. "We're leaving. Now." He grabbed the documents. Karen grabbed Emily, and the 3 slipped out the back door into the tall grass. The night swallowed them as another bullet cracked through the wooden siding. They ran, and behind them, a voice echoed across the dark fields, calm, cold, familiar. "Margaret Layton. Bring me Karen," she called softly, "and burn what Tevis left." The farmhouse lit up in orange flames. Karen didn't look back, but she felt her father's voice pushing her forward. "Run. Survive. Finish what I started." The night air sliced cold across the open fields as Karen, Nathan, and Emily sprinted through the tall grass. Behind them, the flames of Nathan's farmhouse clawed at the sky, turning the dark horizon into a violent orange glow. Nathan didn't slow. Emily clutched her wounded arm. Karen pushed herself until her lungs ached. They reached the tree line and collapsed behind a fallen log. Nathan looked back. "My home, everything I owned." Karen placed a trembling hand on his shoulder. "I'm so sorry." His voice cracked, but he forced a nod. "We'll finish this. For your father. For everything they stole." Karen's jaw tightened. "Yes. Tonight, it ends." They reached Nathan's truck, his backup vehicle, hidden under a tarp near an old shed half a mile away. It wasn't fancy, but it ran. Nathan helped Emily into the back seat. She was pale but conscious. Karen sat in the passenger seat, unzipped the backpack, and pulled out her father's sealed envelope, the one she hadn't opened. Her hands shook as she tore it. Inside was a single keycard and a note in her father's handwriting. "Karen, if you're reading this, they've come for me. The truth is at the county archive vault, level C. I couldn't get inside, but you can. Don't trust anyone wearing a smile." Karen stared at the card. Level C, the restricted floor. Emily's eyes widened. "I've heard of it. Hardly anyone goes down there. If your father hid something there, it must be huge." Nathan started the engine. "Well then, let's go get it." The county records building sat silent at 3 a.m., its marble pillars glowing faintly under the parking lot lights. Normally guarded by 2 officers. Tonight, strangely, it was empty. Too empty. Emily frowned. "This isn't normal. They've cleared the place." Karen's throat tightened. "They know we're coming." Nathan parked behind the building. "Then we move fast." Inside, the hallways were dark. Emergency lights cast long shadows across the floor. The air was stale, humming with electricity. Emily led the way to the elevator. "This card might work," she whispered. Karen swiped the key card. For a moment, nothing. Then ding. The elevator door slid open. Nathan exhaled. Your father planned ahead. As they descended to level C, the air grew colder, heavier. When the doors opened, they stepped into a long, dim corridor lined with metal shelves and locked rooms. Karen clutched the keycard. Dad said the truth was here. Emily pointed. There's one room that requires dual authorization, maybe. Before she finished, footsteps echoed from behind them. Nathan spun. Margaret Layton stood at the far end of the corridor, flanked by the same two men from the woods. Her expression was ice. Karen, she said coolly, put the documents down. Walk away. There are things in this vault bigger than your grief. Karen stepped forward. You burned Nathan's field. You hunted us. You killed my father. Margaret raised a brow. Your father made choices, and you are making the same ones. Karen shook her head. No, he made the right ones, and you're afraid I'll prove it. Margaret sighed, almost disappointed. Take them. The men walked toward them. Nathan whispered, Run. And they did, darting down the hallway, turning sharply into a locked door. Karen swiped the card. The door beeped, opened, and they rushed inside, slamming it behind them. Nathan jammed a metal bar through the handle. Emily flicked the lights on. They found themselves in a massive archive room filled with Times land transfer recordings, Times secure data tapes, Times property rights logs, Times old surveillance footage, Times government correspondences, Times in a large locked cabinet with a glowing biometric panel. Karen's breath caught. That's it. Emily nodded. That cabinet holds historical corruption records, things the county tried to bury. Nathan pointed to a small device beside the cabinet. It needs 2 authorizations. Emily, can you? She stepped forward. I'll try. She pressed her county badge to one sensor. It beeped green. Karen held the keycard to the second panel. It beeped. Red. Then green. The cabinet unlocked with a heavy click. Inside was a black hard drive labeled. Evidence. Land fraud, death of R. Hollis, or county conspiracy. Do not release. Karen's heart shattered. Her father had recorded everything. Nathan lifted the hard drive gently. We have it. Karen's eyes filled. I'm going to expose them. Suddenly, the door rattled, violently. Margaret's voice echoed. Karen, open the door. This is your last chance. Nathan backed up. Get ready to run. The door slammed again. Again. Then the metal bar bent inward. Emily gasped. They are breaking in. Karen grabbed the hard drive and the files. Nathan, when they enter, we bolt for the elevator. Nathan nodded, tightening his grip on the gun. The door snapped open. Margaret's men charged in. Nathan fired a warning shot into the ceiling, debris raining down, giving them the second they needed. Karen dashed past them, Emily close behind, Nathan bringing up the rear. They sprinted down the hallway. Margaret shouted, Stop them! But Karen didn't stop. She dove into the elevator and slammed the door's button. Margaret lunged forward, just as the doors closed. Their eyes met through the gap. Margaret's voice was low, venomous. This won't save you. Karen whispered. It already did. The door shut. At dawn, they reached the regional news station, a tall glass building on the edge of the city. Karen handed the files and hard drive to the senior investigative reporter. Within hours, the story hit national news. Countywide fraud and murder cover-up exposed. HOA president among primary suspects. Arrest warrants were issued. Police raided county offices. Margaret tried to flee, but federal agents boxed her in on the highway. She was arrested. The county commissioner, a developer, and 4 board members were detained too. Karen watched the report unfold on a TV inside the station lobby. Her knees gave out. Nathan caught her. You did it, he whispered. Karen buried her face in his chest, tears soaking his shirt. My father, he didn't die for nothing. Nathan put an arm around her shoulders. No, he saved you, and you saved everyone else. Emily approached, her arm bandaged. This county owes you both. Big time. Karen managed a weak smile, but she wasn't finished yet. A week later, Karen visited the place where her father died, an old utility building near the county border. It had been cleaned out by investigators, the inside cold and empty. She stood in the center of the concrete floor, sunlight pouring through the broken window. Nathan stayed outside, giving her space. Karen whispered, I did it, Dad. I followed the land. I followed the truth. I finished what you started. A single tear slid down her cheek. She placed the keycard on the floor. "For you." Then she walked out into the morning light. Nathan took her hand as they approached his newly rebuilt farmhouse. Volunteers from all over the county had helped restore it. "Ready for the next chapter?" he asked softly. Karen nodded. For the first time, yes. They walked together across the field that had once been burned, now shining gold under the rising sun, no longer a symbol of loss, but of survival, and of justice.